In this section, we'll be discussing aircraft components and flight controls. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify all major aircraft components and understand how to use the aircraft's flight controls to control the airplane. Every airplane has the same basic components: wings, fuselage, an empennage, landing gear, and a power plant. The wing produces lift, which opposes the weight of the airplane. If you were to look at a wing, you notice that it has an upper surface, a lower surface, a forward surface, and a back surface. Each of these places has a name. The upper surface of the wing is called the upper cambered surface. The lower surface is the lower cambered surface. The front of the wing is called the leading edge. The back of the wing is called the trailing edge. There is an imaginary line that runs from the leading edge to the trailing edge. That is called the chord line. The fuselage is the part of the airplane that contains all the passengers and cargo. It also gives a surface to connect the wings and other surfaces to. The empennage is the tail section of the airplane, which consists of a vertical and a horizontal stabilizer. The landing gear allows the airplane to be taxied on the ground and allows for a safe transition from flight back to ground operations. Landing gear typically comes in either a tricycle or tail wheel format. In a tricycle type landing gear, the rear wheels are considered the main landing gear. The front wheel is considered the nose wheel. The power plant does many things for an aircraft, but its primary purpose is to produce thrust. Most power plants in general aviation aircraft do this through the use of a propeller. Think of the propeller as a rotating wing that's pulling the airplane forward. When you get into an airplane for the first time, you may be overwhelmed by all the knobs, wheels, and pedals. This discussion will help clarify the use of flight controls. Now, you're probably already used to thinking about controlling a vehicle in two dimensions: forward, backward, left, and right. An aircraft is a three-dimensional vessel. You must now think about all three dimensions: forward, backward, left, right, up, down. You can control the aircraft in all three dimensions using the yoke, throttle, and rudder pedals. The yoke controls the pitch and roll of an aircraft. You can pitch the airplane by pulling or pushing on the yoke. If you want to roll the wings to start a turn, you simply rotate the yoke left or right. The rudder controls yaw. Simply put, yaw is a left or right movement of the nose. The throttle controls the power of the engine, which corresponds to the amount of thrust being produced. More thrust will help move the airplane forward. Using less thrust will help slow the airplane down. Unfortunately, there's no reverse mode. You'll have to use the ailerons to turn the aircraft around. Moving the yoke and rudder pedals causes surfaces on the wings, vertical, and horizontal stabilizers to move. This is how we bend the air to make the airplane fly. When you pull back on the yoke, it moves the elevator. The elevator is the surface that causes the aircraft to pitch up and down. When you pull back, the elevator comes up. When you push forward, the elevator goes down. On the right side of the elevator is a small tab which allows the pilot to relieve aerodynamic pressure and fine-tune the flight controls. This is called a trim tab. The trim tab is controlled by a small wheel in the cockpit, or in some aircraft, an electric trim switch. If a pilot must consistently apply forward pressure, roll the trim forward. If the pilot consistently needs to apply back pressure on the yoke, roll the trim down. Rotating the yoke left and right moves the ailerons. Notice that when one aileron moves up, the other aileron moves down. The downward aileron creates more lift on one side of the wing, while the upward aileron spoils lift and causes the other side of the wing to drop. The rudder is a control surface on the vertical stabilizer. The rudder is controlled by the rudder pedals. Moving the bottoms of the rudder pedals will actuate the rudder. Most aircraft have flaps on the trailing edge of the wing. Flaps are lift devices that help the airplane fly at lower speeds. The power plant also has its own flight controls. In most training airplanes, you'll find two knobs associated with the power plant: the throttle and the mixture. In order for a power plant to run, you need three ingredients: air, fuel, and something to spark it. The mixture controls the amount of fuel being mixed with air. The throttle controls the amount of fuel-air mixture being used by the engine. This airplane has an additional control for the propeller RPM. This blue knob adjusts the propeller blades to maintain a selected RPM value. On most training airplanes, the propeller blade angle cannot be adjusted and RPM is controlled with the throttle instead. Now that you know what all the flight controls do, let's talk about the aerodynamics of how the wing works.